Well, good morning. Hey, it's so good to be back with you guys. I think I was here a couple of years ago when I was writing this sermon. I started to write, it was good to be with you last year, but that was 2020, and we're just forgetting that whole thing. It was a couple of years ago when I was here. I just texted with Cody about an hour ago, and you know this already, but I told him, I was like, man, one of the measures of a really good leader is how well his team does when he's not there. And based on that measure, man, this team around here just kills it. I know you know that. I know you know Cody's a great leader, but this is one of my favorite churches because of just the infectious joy of this place. And so thank you so much for having me back. I brought my son Silas, who's my third of four children, and when I was here the last time, I told a story about how I accidentally left him at a park and drove all the way home, and it took a while before I realized I had forgotten him. And so I brought him with me on this trip just to prove to you I'm still a good parent, and he's around. I'm not really sure where he is right now, but he's around here somewhere, and y'all are safe people, so I'm sure he's fine. Hey, quick question for you: how many of you, by a show of hands, dance at weddings? And slow dancing doesn't count. You dance at weddings. All right, a good amount of you. How many of you do not dance at weddings? You are not going to be talked into that. All right. Well, I'm a wedding dancer mostly because my wife of 20 years requires it of me. She will not allow me to go to a wedding reception just for the food. She makes me participate in dancing. Now, one of my favorite things about going to a wedding reception where there's dancing is seeing people who typically don't dance try. It's one of my favorite things. Also, one of my favorite things is to observe how smart the wedding DJ is, because a good wedding DJ will play the kind of songs that I refer to them as white people proof songs, meaning they're the kind of songs that they're easy to dance to. Songs like YMCA, Macarena, you know, the electric slide, which is literally just walking and turning. I mean, how hard can that be? But the ultimate white people proof song is what's called the cha-cha slide. Now, you might not know exactly what that is, but when I tell you what it is, you'll know it because it's literally color by number dancing. It tells you everything to do. Slide to the left, slide to the right, crisscross, right? And if you can't get all that stuff right, then there's just the part where he goes, everybody clap your hands. Exactly. And it doesn't even have to be on beat. It's just, it's just everybody clapping their hands. That's all it is. So a good wedding DJ knows to play songs like that, like, Shake It Off, Uptown Funk, stuff like that. But also a good wedding DJ knows there are certain songs you can play where people will gather on the dance floor just to sing certain parts of the song, even though you can't dance to the song. You know what I'm talking about? Like Living on a Prayer, for example. Like everybody just gathers on the dance floor and just waits for that moment. Whoa, we're halfway there. And then the key change part that nobody can sing, because Bon Jovi back then just had unbelievable range. But the one that my wife hates that I love, and I sing it to her all the time just to make her mad, is my favorite. It's Sweet Caroline. Sweet Caroline. Exactly. See, now, have you ever been to a wedding where the DJ did not read the room well and they just could not get any level of participation? They play ill-fitting songs for the occasion. Like, imagine a wedding DJ playing that really sad Sarah McLachlan in the Arms of an Angel song that they always play before pet adoption commercials for some reason, even though it's about someone who overdosed from heroin. I don't know what this has to do with a puppy, but I'm sad now, thanks, That would just be ill-fitting. It wouldn't fit the occasion, would it? Well, last week you looked at this moment in Jesus' ministry where he's at this party with a whole bunch of notorious sinners, and the religious onlookers are very upset about Jesus and what he's doing, and he's made clear to them what his methodology and his mindset is, but they can't wrap their hearts and minds around his message, much less his methodology. So we're going to pick up right on the heels of that moment today in Luke chapter 5, beginning in verse 33. Check this out. One day some people said to Jesus, John the Baptist's disciples fast and pray regularly, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees. Why are your disciples always eating and drinking? Jesus responded, well, do wedding guests fast while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they'll fast. Then Jesus gave them this illustration. No one tears a piece of cloth from a new garment and uses it to patch an old garment, for the new garment would be ruined, and the new patch wouldn't even match the old garment. No one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the new wine would burst the wineskins, spilling the wine and ruining the skin. So new wine must be stored in new wineskins. But no one who drinks the old wine seems to want the new wine. The old is just fine, they say. So the folks who are questioning Jesus are having trouble understanding him. He's blowing their minds. And so this party that he attended at Matthew's house was only the most recent thing that they simply don't understand. And so what Jesus does is he gives them like 3 pictures, 3 portraits, 3 illustrations, really to emphasize the same point over and over again, which is this: it's not Jesus' job to conform to me and you. It's our job to be transformed to be more like him. If you try to conform him to your image, it simply just won't work. He won't do it. He's not an add-on. He won't fit your old paradigms. He won't accommodate your worldview. Jesus came in his own words to seek and save the lost, and that's precisely what he intends to do, whether you and I get on board with him in that initiative or not. And so consequently, when these religious people question him about partying, he makes no apologies. Did you notice that? He doesn't go, I've been thinking about that. I'm really, really sorry. I repent. No, he doesn't do that at all. So the funny thing in this instance is that they want to draw this comparison to John the Baptist and his followers. Look at this. John the Baptist's disciples fast and pray regularly, and so do the disciples of the Pharisees. Why are your disciples always eating and drinking? They're pretending as if they've always been big fans of John the Baptist. They had a very strained relationship, to say the least, with John the Baptist. He was abrupt, man. I mean, he's calling people names and brood of vipers and stuff like that all the time. It's not like he was Mr. Popularity, but in this instance, he helps them make their case in this argument with Jesus, but Jesus won't have it. In another instance, Jesus calls out the hypocrisy of this comparison in Matthew 11. Look at this. To what can I compare this generation? It's like children playing a game in the public square. They complain to their friends, we played wedding songs and you didn't dance. So we played funeral songs and you didn't mourn. For John didn't spend his time eating and drinking, and you say he's possessed by a demon. Son of Man, on the other hand, feasts and drinks. You say he's a glutton and a drunkard, the friend of tax collectors and sinners. Jesus is going, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we do. He's like, I played the cha-cha slide, y'all didn't dance. John played taps and y'all didn't mourn. What does it matter? Here's the key word. You're unresponsive. You're utterly unresponsive. So it's not at all surprising that Jesus is not willing to play this little game with them when they question him about fasting and feasting. Instead, he gives them these 3 pictures to explain, man, y'all are the ones missing the point, not me. And the first picture is one of a wedding. This is really cool. In Jesus' day, in ancient cultures, wedding feasts would sometimes go on for like days, and the duration of the party was determined by the presence of the groom. So it's really interesting. After a period of time, oftentimes the bride would get tired and want to retire to the bridal chamber to await her groom. But as long as the groom was at the party, man, the party kept going. It was a time for feasting. If the groom left the party, then everything toned down a little bit. So one of the roles of the best man, he was referred to as the friend of the groom, was to actually, when the bride decided to go take a nap or go to bed or whatever it was, to retire for the evening, the best man would be the one to escort her back to the bridal chamber, and then he would literally stand guard outside the door until the groom came, and he would high-five, handshake, and get out of the groom's way. That was his job, was to get out of the groom's way. Now, this meant that as a groom, when you picked your best man, the qualification was not that he was a good drinking buddy in college. Right? The qualification was a much higher standard than that, because you're literally putting your wife, your new wife, in his hands, and it's his job to protect her till you get there. So all of a sudden, it starts to make a whole lot of sense when John the Baptist says these words, I'm only here to prepare the way for him. Talking about Jesus. It is the bridegroom who marries the bride, and the bridegroom's friend, John the Baptist, is simply glad to stand with him and hear his vows. Therefore, I'm filled with joy at his success. He must become greater, and I must become less and less. John was the best man, Jesus is the groom, and Jesus hadn't left the party yet. So it would be ill-fitting for his disciples to be found fasting when they're supposed to be feasting. It wouldn't fit the occasion. It'd be like playing a funeral song at a wedding celebration. Now he says their time of mourning, it will come for about 3 days while he's in a grave. But this has implications for me and you. This means for me and you, the normal everyday life of a follower of Jesus is a joyful response to the presence of Jesus in our lives, because y'all, Jesus is alive, right? So the second illustration Jesus gives is this. No one tears a piece of cloth from a new garment and uses it to patch the old garment, for the new garment would be ruined. The new patch wouldn't even match the old. In other words, Jesus is not an addendum. He's not an amendment to the constitution of your life. He's not a nice to have. He's not an add-on. He's comprehensive. I don't know who said it first, but it's always been helpful to me, but Jesus plus anything equals nothing. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. Jesus plus nothing equals everything. And one of the problems in Jesus' day was the religious folks in particular were trying to figure out a way to fit him into their current cultural ways of thinking, trying to fit him into their paradigm of what the Messiah was supposed to do and not do. And Jesus is just walking around literally pulling pins on grenades and lobbing them into all their preconceived notions of what the Messiah was supposed to do and what the Messiah was not supposed to do. And Jesus is just simply telling them, you're trying to fit me into something I don't fit into, and it's not going to work. It's going to blow everything up for you. Now, this is particularly a danger in very religious settings. I'll give you an example. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky. It's where I grew up. It's where I spent the first 8 years of my ministry. And then in 2006, my wife and I packed up everything, our 2 babies at the time, and moved all the way across the country and lived in Boulder, Colorado. Very different place than where we had grown up. Now, one of the things that's interesting in Boulder was that it was very easy to distinguish the difference between Christians and non-Christians. We were there for 11 years. If someone was at church, for example, if they participated in the life of the church, it was not because of social pressure. There was no social pressure to go to church. Social pressure to do a lot of other things, like go skiing or try one of the 10,000 craft breweries out there, but not to go to church. In other words, going to church was not a hobby for anybody in Colorado. So if somebody was participating in the life of the church, it was because either they were a genuine worshiper and follower of Jesus, or they had a genuine interest in Jesus. They were seeking Jesus, like they may be seeking a million other things, to see if Jesus would make a difference in their life. But there was really no in between. So that made things in that sense, and only maybe in that sense, simple in Boulder. Now, I probably don't have to tell you this, but in the Bible Belt, it's very different. I'll give you a distinction that was pretty startling to me. When I came back to Kentucky in 2017, I came back, and to be honest with you, I was kind of braced for impact. Because on a scale of grace and truth, I lean towards truth, and I have to really embrace grace. And so I can be kind of bold, I can be kind of upfront, I'm kind of matter of fact. And so I just assumed, man, I'm going to rattle some cages back here in my hometown. Because, man, the level of criticism I got while I was in Colorado was significant. Like, all the time. People were calling me names, threats, all that kind of stuff. I get back to Kentucky, and it just didn't happen. Like, I got a whole bunch of pats on the backs, attaboys, and good sermon today, preacher, that kind of stuff. And it started to feel like, man, have I gone soft? Like, am I pulling punches? Are people just less sensitive in the South? Am I preaching to the choir? What's going on? Well, in the 3.5, almost 4 years now since being back, I think I've determined a little bit of what that's about. And you probably are aware of some of this around here too. You see, in the Bible Belt, some people are what I refer to as inoculated to Jesus. We get just enough of Jesus to be unresponsive to him. He's just kind of something sprinkled into the rest of our lives that we tell him to stay out of. See, in Colorado, what I experienced was a literal collision of worldviews with implications about who Jesus is and what he's done. Folks out there had a tendency to either love Jesus or hate him, but there wasn't much in the middle. One of the things I try to communicate to our folks all the time is simply this: Jesus is king of everything, or he's king of nothing. It's one or the other. Those are the two deals on the table, and I believe he's king of everything, which means that there's no part of my life or yours that he's like, you know what, I'll leave that to you. You know what, I'll stay out of that. You know what, that's none of my business. That's not my territory. It's all his territory. So that means in my context back in Lexington, there's more like 3 kinds of people as opposed to the 2 that I dealt with in Boulder. We have genuine followers of Jesus at Southland. It's so much fun. We have people their lives are marked by what I call sacrificial joy, and I could give you a million examples of that, but one of the most vivid ones is if you walk around Southland, you will see adopted children everywhere. Adopted children just everywhere, because we believe that what better portrait of what God the Father has done for me and you than to adopt lost and broken kids. And so we have simple, steady, faithful Christians who have oriented their entire lives around Jesus and serving him and serving others. It's an incredibly joyful church. Like, every time I come here, I'm like, man, this is a lot like home, because you guys are so joyful. You don't take yourselves too seriously. You laugh a lot. We also have genuine seekers. Just the other day, 5:45 in the morning, I rolled into the office, still dark outside, and I was met on the front steps by a young man who just crashed his car. He was coming off of meth. He was shaking. He had destroyed his life and his family. He said he just wanted to be near Southland. He knew that we were a place that puts Jesus front and center, and he wanted healing in his life, and he thought just maybe he could find it if he could make it to our church parking lot. I could give you 1,000 examples of that as well. But we also have those inoculated folks. Folks who just go through the motions, they check the religious box, they show up to a service, but other than that, there's nothing in their life that would indicate that Jesus is a part of their marriage, their parenting, their business, their friendships, or anything else. It's just a thing they do out of duty or obligation or tradition. They're kind of like folks at a wedding, doesn't matter what song you play, they ain't dancing. And it's really, really sad. But here's the thing. The day, I believe, has now come. It's not coming soon, it's now come, where the social cost of being a follower of Jesus has so significantly grown that it's become very clarifying. And we used to live, you know this, we used to live in a culture that kind of put up with Christians, kind of accommodated Christians, but no more. That day is dead and gone. That is buried. That ship has sailed, which means that this third category of kind of cultural Christians is literally just going to fade away. And we're seeing that in Lexington. I bet you'll see it here too if you haven't already. And that's really sad. It breaks my heart because I'll tell you what, following Jesus has been the adventure of a lifetime for me and my family. It has by no means been easy, but who wants easy anyway, right? It's been an adventure. With Jesus, man, I've confronted my past. I've faced down fear. I've fallen flat on my face. I've failed. With Jesus, I've cried. With Jesus, I've fought. With Jesus, I've moved my family across the country not once but twice. With Jesus, I'm parenting 4 children, 3 of them teenagers. Please pray for me. With Jesus, I've been married faithfully to my wife for 20 years, even though all the statistics say that we should be divorced and I should be in prison. But we're still married and I ain't in prison yet. All because of Jesus. And I could go on and on and on. He's led, we've followed, and it's been more than worth it. Jesus plus nothing has literally been everything to us. Jesus gives that third picture. No one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the new wine would burst the wineskins, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine must be stored in new wineskins, but no one who drinks the old wine seems to want the new wine. The old is just fine, they say. So you don't have to be a wine connoisseur to understand the metaphor, right? So wine, when it ferments, it expands, and so you need pliable skins if you're going to put them in wine skins, so that over the course of that fermentation process, they can stretch and grow together. But if you take old wine skins that have already been stretched to their limit, put new wine in it, it will burst and rupture everything. Interestingly as well, you don't have to be a wine connoisseur to know that the old wine is always considered the better wine, but here comes Jesus who says, hey, guess what? I'm new and I'm better than everything you've ever experienced before. So don't try to fit me into your old paradigms. See, ultimately what he's painting the picture of is a contrast between two things. In theological terms, it's the distinction between law and grace. See, the Pharisees, the religious experts of Jesus' day, had taken this really good gift called the Old Testament law, and they choked the life out of it. They had stretched it beyond its limits. I'll give you just one easy example. This thing called the Sabbath, which was this beautiful gift, a day of rest to be restored, to celebrate and just joyfully be amongst family and friends, they had made into a heavy burden that nobody could bear. So it's interesting, if you read the Gospels, literally every time that it says, and on a Sabbath, Jesus is about to blow it up. And he does it on purpose. Like he does it I'll give you one example. It's probably my favorite one. John chapter 9, he comes across this dude who's born blind. All right, this man who's born blind. And Jesus, if you notice this, he heals people in different ways all the time. He has different sometimes he's not even near the person who needs the healing. He goes, just go, they'll be fine. Sometimes he puts his hands on them. But what does he do in this instance on the Sabbath? He spits on the ground, right? You with me? He makes some mud, and he puts it on the dude's eyes. It seems weird. It seems over the top, doesn't it? It actually doesn't even seem like the way Jesus would normally do things until you realize why he did it. Puts mud on the man's eyes, tells him to go wash, and then when the man turns up being able to see, he gets called in by the religious experts, and the thing they keep coming back to, if you read the story, is they keep mentioning, who's the man who made the mud? Here's a dude who was born blind, now can see, but they're worried because somebody made mud on the Sabbath. You know why? Because making mud on the Sabbath was prohibited by them, because in their interpretation of the law, if someone was to step in the mud that you made on the Sabbath, they would then have to scrape the mud off their sandal, which is work. And now the man who made the mud is in violation of the Sabbath for making the person who stepped in the mud and scraped off the mud violate the Sabbath by doing work. Now all of a sudden you read that story through a whole new lens, and so Jesus blew the whole thing up. He didn't have to spit on the ground and make the mud, but he did it on purpose. Why? To make this clear that if you try to play this game where you try to import Jesus, the new, into the old, it's going to ruin everything. It's going to ruin everything. See, the Old Testament law was a good gift to serve a significant purpose, and that significant purpose was to deliver bad news, which we need to hear. 600 and some odd rules to all prove the same point, that you and I can't live up to any of them. We're not good enough. We can't, by our own merit and our own good works, measure up to the righteous standard of a holy God. And we need to know that, don't we? Otherwise, we become like the religious leaders who start to get all puffed up and believe all their own press clippings and think they've actually got it figured out and that they actually can, based on their obedience to the rules and all the extra rules that they put on top of it, live up to God's righteous standard, which is why that little event that you guys studied last week was so offensive to them when they approached Jesus at Matthew's house and said, "Why do you eat and drink with such scum?" Jesus answered them, "Well, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. I've come not to call those who think," keyword, "they're righteous, but those who know they're sinners and need to repent." Here's what I want you to notice. Jesus did not tell them that they were well. They just assumed they were. When he said, "I came for sick people," they just all assumed, well, that ain't us. How dangerous is that? How sad is that? That's why Jesus said, "I tell you the truth, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are entering the kingdom of God ahead of you." That's why C.S. Lewis later said, "Prostitutes are in no danger of finding their present life so satisfactory that they cannot turn to God. It's the proud, the avaricious, the self-righteous that are in that danger." See, the religious folks couldn't come to terms with the bad news that we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God because they didn't think the word all included them. And because they couldn't embrace the bad news, that means they also can't embrace the good news either. See, if you don't believe you're sick, it's no big deal to hear that there's a cure for a disease that you don't think you have. See, grace scares religious people to death, and for good reason, because it seems like something that could easily get out of control if put in the wrong hands. I assure you, it'll do both of those things. It'll get firmly out of control, but it's firmly in the hands of Jesus, which means it's right where it needs to be. I love this description of our approach to grace. It's indicting and true in so many ways. We're afraid of grace getting carried away, and so we want to slap some conditions on it. Well, grace is not something we can control. Grace is not something we can manage. God's grace is a tsunami that will carry us all away and deposit us in places we would not have anticipated, and all of them good. Well, we analyze all this carefully, and we say that we want our grace to be genuine water, just like this tsunami, but we want it to be a placid pond on a summer day that we can inch across gingerly, always keeping one pointed toe on what we think is the sure bottom of our own do-gooding morality. Isn't that true? We try to control God's grace. So here's the question. If grace is a tsunami, and I think it is, what's the proper response if you're standing on a beach and you see a tsunami coming to you? The proper response. You might want to just surrender. You run, it doesn't matter. Just surrender to it. Be swept up in it. Be carried away with it. And so what I've learned is this: when Jesus collides with a surrendered and responsive heart, his grace is truly transformative. It actually changes the way I relate to myself, because I start to see myself not through the lens of my worst, but I see myself through the lens of Jesus' best on my behalf. And I can relate to you differently. I don't have any stones to throw at you, because after all, you're just a sinner who was swept up in the grace of God just like me. It actually changes the way I relate to my Creator. God is my Father, Jesus is my brother, and the Holy Spirit is my friend. And surrender to all of his transformative work in my life, which is why, for followers of Jesus, every day can be a joyful response to the presence of Jesus in our lives. Pray with me. Father God, I'm so grateful for this church. I'm so grateful for Hope City. I'm so thankful for the families that are a part of it. I'm so thankful for the babies that have been born in this place. I'm thankful for the marriages. I'm thankful for the funerals, the the everyday walking around normal life that happens in this church. And I'm thankful for the joy that just exudes out of it and out of these folks. And I'm grateful to get to be here to open your word with them. Father, we do want our lives to be a joyful response to who you are and what you've done in our lives. And so we offer you just that. We offer you our lives, and we're thankful for how you've swept us up in the tsunami of your grace. It's in Jesus' beautiful name we pray. Amen.